So moved. Mr. Vaught, could you please read the certification of the closed session?
Whereas the New Kent County School Board has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the New Kent County School Board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore, be it resolved that the New Kent County School Board hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirement by Virginia law were discussed in closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and 2, only such business matters as were identified Excuse me while we find the rest of this declaration. I don't have it, and I certainly don't remember it. Thank you. I was going to say, you're assuming I can see that far, right?
Ms. Davis, let me know when it's on the screen. I'll put it back up there.
Okay, I'll finish. Thank you, Mr. Pagano. So I'll start again at number 2. Only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed session meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the New Kent County School Board.
Thank you, Mr. Vaught. Let's see. Now let's move to, by now you have had the opportunity, has everybody had the opportunity to review the items listed on the consent agenda, including minutes, monthly bill and payroll, and the superintendent's recommendations regarding personnel and student matters?
Mr. Chair, if
Yes.
I may, we need to do the 2 and 3 before we get to, you have a certification closed session. You need a motion to approve.
Oh, thank you.
Second, and then we'll get into the pledge. I appreciate your efficiency, sir.
Do you see the second on that motion?
Do I have a second on the motion to approve the consent,
I second.
or I'm sorry, the certification? Motion and second's been made. Could you please pause?
Ms. Cunha?
Aye.
Mr. Pagano?
Aye.
Mr. Vaught?
Aye.
Ms. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Reimer?
Aye. So, now that we've taken care of all of that, Dr. Nichols, do we have anyone to lead the pledge for us?
Mr. Chair, we did not, and then I saw Colin Smolnick walk in, and he has vast experience doing the pledge as a lifelong scout. So I know he's on borrowed time with us before they move, so I would love to ask Colin Smolnick to do it. How about it, Colin?
So tonight, in our student spotlight, we have the National Spanish Exam medalist, Dr. Nichols.
Yes, sir. And I'm going to make my way to the podium, but I'm going to be joined by Ms. St. Dennis, who leads this initiative. So I'm going to ask her to tell you a little bit about the National Spanish Exam because it is very rigorous. And then we're going to recognize some students.
Thank you, Dr. Nichols, and good evening, School Board. I'm Erica St. Dennis, and I am proud to teach 7th grade Spanish at New Kent Middle School. I won a grant from the New Kent Educational Foundation this year to administer the National Spanish Exam, which is given to 90,000 students across the country, mostly in private schools. I gave this test cold to my students to see how our curriculum stacked up against the national curriculum. And I'm proud to say that 4 of my students did make the medalists. So I'm very proud of them, especially since they took it cold. I would like to apply for this grant again and do a bit more practice and see if we can't get even more medalists to show that New Kent County is capable of excellence on the national scale. I'm very proud of my students, all of whom work very hard in this high school level class they're taking as 7th graders. And I just couldn't be more delighted to be here tonight with these students. One of them could not be here tonight. He will be presented with his medal at our awards ceremony next Friday, but 3 of them are here.
So you're doing a great job as the MC. I'll be the hander out. So you...
All right, I would like to start out with honorable mention on the national scale for Chloe Smolnick. Jonathan Cruz will receive his on Friday. I have another honorable mention of Kirsten Izzy Atkins. And I'm very proud to say that we had a silver medalist on the national scale, and that is Yanela Emery. Felicitaciones a todos. Muchas gracias.
Do I have my camera? But I'll make it. That's perfect. I don't have my camera, but I'll make it work.
You're good.
One more.
Okay, one more. Gracias.
Congratulations, both to the students and the teacher. So we're going to take about a 5-minute adjournment now to allow the people who came here to celebrate the awards to leave if they choose to, and we'll reconvene in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
The board meeting is now back in session. So the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. So tonight, on the consent agenda, we'll be approving the minutes from March 4th, the financials from April, and the superintendent's recommendations regarding personnel matters. Does anybody have a requirement for multiple votes on this, on the consent agenda?
I do not.
I do.
Okay. First item on the consent agenda. I make a motion to approve the minutes for March 4th.
Second.
All those in favor, could you please poll us?
Mr. Reimer, were you the motion?
So the motion is to approve the minutes for March 4th.
So moved. Ask for a second.
And a second, please.
Second.
Could you please poll us?
Mr. Vaught,
Aye.
Mr. Pagano,
Aye.
Ms. Cunha,
Aye.
Ms. Dombrowski,
Nay.
and Mr. Reimer.
Aye. So the minutes have been approved for March 4th. So the next on the consent agenda is the monthly financials for April. Do I hear a motion to approve the monthly financials for April?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Could you please poll us?
Mr. Reimer,
Aye.
Mr. Vaught,
Nay.
and Ms. Cunha,
Aye.
Mr. Pagano,
Aye.
Ms. Dombrowski.
Aye.
And the final motion is to approve the superintendent's recommendations regarding personnel matters. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Can you poll us?
Yes. Mr. Reimer,
Aye.
Mr. Vaught,
Aye.
Mr. Pagano,
Aye.
Ms. Cunha,
Aye.
Ms. Dombrowski.
Aye.
Thank you. So the consent agenda has been approved. The minutes by a vote of 4-1, the financials by a vote of 4-1, and the superintendent's recommendations regarding personnel matters by a 5-0 vote. Thank you. Next to new business. So tonight there'll be a healthcare premiums presentation. Mr. Matt Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, school board members, Dr. Nichols. Matt Davis with McGriff Insurance Services. What we wanted to do today is walk you through the renewal process that we followed for not only the medical, but the dental and the vision for the employee benefits. So take about 10 minutes or so to go through it, but if you have any questions, please stop me as we go and be glad to answer those, address those questions as they come up. Next slide, please.
Sir, could you please speak up just a bit? Hold the mic. I don't think anybody on the web could hear you.
Okay. Is that better? Okay. So next slide, please. So we'll start with the medical and prescription drug renewal. First of all, we're recommending no increase to the expected liabilities, which is what we fund for the rates. I'll get into that in a few minutes and explain that. Some of the other details is the administrative costs, being that you're self-funded, the cost to pay claims is actually going down about 15%, mainly due to our exclusive contract with Anthem that enables a higher drug rebate, if you will. The second thing, or third thing really that's of note, is there's only one benefit change. This is mandated by the IRS on the high deductible health plan. So we're changing the high deductible health plan deductible from $3,000 for an individual and $6,000 for family to $3,200 and $6,400 respectively. We are changing this to a renewal for July 1. We'll call it a short plan year. So it renews October 1st. And instead of renewing next year at September 30th or the following October 1st, we're going to end the plan year June 30th and have the renewal date from that point forward go from July 1 through June 30th every year. And that will better align with your fiscal year. Also, the last note is the IBNR estimate. Because you're self-funded, that stands for incurred but not reported. You do carry on your books a liability for claims that were incurred in a current plan year but not paid till the plan year was actually over. So then that changes a little bit every year depending on claims level. So we're recommending no increase to funding for the health plan, both on the the school board side as well as the employees. That's really good news. We've had a couple of rough years over the last couple of years, and this is the first time in probably 3 or 4 years that I can remember there's no increase. We'll walk you through that later. The one piece of unfinished business is we do have to finalize the reinsurance numbers. We're using a 24% illustrative number in these rates. We feel totally comfortable with that. We do go to market for the reinsurance, which provides coverage, if you will, for catastrophic claims, either on an individual basis or the group basis. But we finalize those, and we'll actually probably finalize those in the next week. So, but we feel perfectly fine with funding at the numbers that you'll see tonight. So more on that as time comes on, but as far as for setting the budget, we think we have everything we need. The dental insurance, the ASO fee, which is administrative fee for paying claims and having access to Delta Dental's network, is going up by 3.4%. That's $782 annually, not a big number. We recommend no increase to funding there as well, so no increase. That is completely employee paid. We also recommend adding the special needs benefit, which provides extra cleanings for developmentally disabled children and members. And then we also recommend implementing the Right Start for Kids, which gives 100% coverage for children for dental care under the age of 13. Okay, and we're able to do that without increasing rates. That's pretty phenomenal. Voluntary vision, again, employee paid. We're recommending enhancing that benefit from $130 allowance annually for frames and lenses to $150. And that impact is about $1,900. Again, that's completely employee paid. Next slide, please. So the employee assistance program, we looked at all options within terms of increasing that benefit. It's highly underutilized, which is typical of all employee assistance programs. So there was a small increase. I think it was 2 or 3 cents per employee per month. But we recommend keeping the plan the same. There's no sense in improving the plan if you're not going to get the utilization. Consumer benefits, which are accident, critical illness, that's under rate guarantee, so there's no action to be taken there. We do recommend adopting FedLogic, which is a program that assists employees and their families to navigate the complicated avenues of the federal and state healthcare systems, meaning Medicare, Medicaid, TRICARE, particularly when you're talking about somebody with disabilities or getting ready to retire. It's very complex. It is a free service for them to access. It does cost the school board $3.50 per employee per month. They do show return on the investment typically, which is for each transition they help with. It returns to the school board about $26,400 when appropriate. They don't sell product. All they do is provide information and give people direction. So that's important to know. And it's actually founded by people who used to be agents for the federal government. So great program. On the wellness front, we can recommend continuing the annual physical requirement for employees and spouses. We'll get into that in a few minutes. But we're also recommending that we terminate the programs for Burn Along and Health Advocate, and the savings is shown on the right-hand side. We feel like those dollars could be reinvested in the school board and used more wisely elsewhere. So just a little bit of a framework of how we got to the no increase on the renewal. There's a lot of numbers on this page. I'm not going to get into all of them. But the 4 numbers that are important, when we look at your renewal, your renewal is based upon your claims almost exclusively. Your medical claims are down 15.19% year to date. Your pharmacy claims are up 2.21%, which is pharmacy trend right now is about 24%. So the fact that it's only up 2.21% is great. You are running a surplus of just shy of $500,000, which is great because we've been running a deficit the last couple of years. And then the last number I'll leave you with is you can't really make it out on the screen, but your large claims, those are claims over $25,000. They drive your claims experience, and they still make up about 55% of your total spend, which is not a bad thing. It's just more informational. That is still a big part of your spend. This is a very busy slide. The numbers you want to pay attention to are in the blue boxes. The first one is the surplus for this year is on the left-hand side, $469,000. We were running a deficit this time last year of $236,000. So that's quite a change. And really hats off to the school systems leadership and HR team for making some tough decisions over the last 2 or 3 years to implement programs to turn the claims experience around, which it really has. When you look at a comparison on a total per employee per month cost, you went from $1,435 per employee per month in terms of total plan costs down to $1,332, which is again, very, very positive. Next slide, please. So this is a calculation of the renewal. I'm not going to go through this in detail. Happy to answer any questions, but basically what we do at the top half of the page is we take your claims experience for the last 2 years, we blend it together, and then we add medical inflation, which is that 8.5%. And we annualize that and then basically take it from the end of the review period all the way through the entire plan year. That's why those numbers of 1.218 and the 1.123 are so high, as you're analyzing the trend over the entire review period. Then we add those together after we blend them and then add in your fixed costs, which you can see your administrative costs went down. If you do the math on this SSL, which stands for specific stop loss, that went up 24%. And then we had a small increase on the aggregate stop loss. So specific stop loss provides you claims protection for any claim over $125,000, and then the aggregate provides protection for the entire group if claims exceed 125% of what we project or expect. So that being said, we ended up with just under a 0% increase, which is fantastic. Okay. What we're proposing is 0%. We may have to tweak some rate categories within some plans. They may get a decrease, but for the overall message is no increase to the employees. The next slide just illustrates the benefit change that we talked about at the top, which is just a change on the high deductible health plan that's mandated by the IRS. And that plan still has 100% coverage or zero out-of-pocket cost after the deductible except for pharmacy. All the other benefits are going to remain the same. So no increase, no benefit changes. Again, this is a slide that shows you the detail of what we work with, and you can see two things on this slide. Is the projected claims shows a slight decrease in claims from 4.5 million, 4.564 million down to 4.272 million. The increase primarily comes from the stop loss at the 24%. What we call the retention or the admin cost, that actually goes down due to the pharmacy negotiations that we had with Anthem. I'll pause there before we go into the dental and vision. Any questions? I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers, a lot of technical terms at you.
As far as the wellness and the marketing strategy page, dropping Burnalong and Health Advocate, do we know why they were not utilized?
So Health Advocate, you've actually had since before I started working with you guys over 10 years ago. And it's always been less than a 2% utilization. It's just, we've tried engagements, we've tried education. There's just not a lot of uptick on it.
And that was my next question, if we had tried anything to promote those.
We have.
Okay.
And I'll jump in as well. So Tammy Waters, who's in the audience as well, leads that initiative for us. She has, and you've probably seen the HR Corner newsletter that comes out, the Burn Along contest. You can win some really cool prizes for being healthy. A lot of marketing push around it. The interest or appetite for it just hasn't been there. So
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure we weren't cutting off something that we hadn't promoted properly when it comes to wellness, because ultimately, long-term, that reduces costs. So thank you.
Absolutely. And just a footnote, we'll continue to explore avenues and opportunities. We meet every year and talk about what programs are new, what approaches are new. So we'll bring more to you guys as time goes on. So thanks for the question.
Mr. Davis, I have a follow-up question about the short-term year. Can you just revisit that concept again? Am I correct in thinking that instead of renewing October 1 and continuing until September 30th of 2025, this will actually shut down 3 months earlier, July 1, 2025?
That's correct.
So this is a 9-month renewal instead of a 12.
Exactly. And the key, that's a great question. The key with that is education to the employees, right? Because what you don't want to have somebody do is thinking it's 12 months and it's 9 months, and they plan accordingly as they accumulate to the deductible. Invariably, there's going to be somebody it will not end up well for, but there's also going to be people it will end up really well for. So the reset is really, the only thing we can do about that is educate folks appropriately. So and when we've done this, I've done this with other school systems in the past. It has gone really well as long as we do the education piece.
Matt, will you share a little bit about why we're shifting, just so the board understands kind of why we're moving in this direction?
I think that the biggest thing is there's two issues. One is when you bring on new teachers under contract, it becomes very difficult to manage that process from a payroll deduction perspective. That's one issue. The other issue is when you talk about setting a budget, we set budgets today basically for 9 months in the current fiscal year and then 3 months in the subsequent fiscal year. So it gets very messy in terms of being able to make that line up with your actual budget that's approved. And we have seen a lot of school systems switch to either a 1/1 effective date, or more have actually switched to a 7/1 effective date to really align with the fiscal years. So.
And another piece, board members, we continue conversations with the county about the potential intersection to do healthcare together, and given us over 500 people in that pool, it would also align us with the county's July 1 as well. So multiple reasons for the shift at this point in time.
Right.
So
Very good. Great question. Thank you.
How does that impact anybody transitioning to Medicare or something during the open enrollment period?
It would not impact anybody transitioning to Medicare at all. So the business as usual. So great question.
Can you explain IBNR estimate one more time?
I absolutely can.
Thank you.
It
That's
stands
all.
for incurred but not reported, and you carry it as
Thank you.
a liability on your balance sheet. And it's for those claims that if I go to the doctor today, that claim is likely not to be paid for anywhere from 45 days to 90 days. So it's allowing for those claims should you, let's say you terminate your contract and merge with the county, then we would have to pay out claims under that contract. That's what it would be used for.
Gotcha. And then on the Delta Dental increasing ASO fee, ASO?
It stands for Administrative Services Only. We have all kinds of acronyms in the insurance business, and that's just the administrative cost is the easy answer.
Okay. And then the last question was requiring the annual physical requirement for employee and spouse. I'm guessing the spouse is only if they're enrolled.
Correct. It's just for people in the health plan. Great question. And we'll address that later in the recommendations, but basically what we, age-appropriate or physicals and age-appropriate testing and lab work. So we're hitting the whole gamut. The goal is not so much that they get that done. It's really, that's important, but it's also to build a relationship with a primary care physician, not use an urgent care as their primary care physician. So we know that is the number one thing in health and wellness to affect a positive outcome for folks, is a good relationship with the primary care.
And then did you say on the EAP that that's being underutilized?
Yes, and it's not just you guys, it's every group. if we get 5% utilization of an EAP, that's a good year.
So where are we increasing the visits?
No, we looked at it. We're not. We're keeping it the
We
same.
looked at it, okay, thank you,
Yep,
but not increasing them.
correct.
And board members, just a little bit of a spoiler alert on the wellness side of things to connect all this together. Tammy Waters has been planning a wellness expo fair. I can't remember the last name, but so after convocation coming back, there's a big wellness half day that has all the options and opportunities, and it's the only time we have a captive audience of 500 employees. So we'll be throwing a wellness fair party, something that has all these vendors and really connections with our community too, that does wellness, yoga, Pilates, all those kind of things as well. So it's really going to be a lot of fun. So capture them in the beginning.
So in the employee assistance program, what exactly does that entail?
So it entails 3 free visits to a mental health professional per event. So if somebody has multiple events during the year, they get 3 visits. And there's a lot more. It's a lot more to it than that, but that's essentially the.
Are there alternative programs?
Meaning.
Well, so we have this program that allows an employee to go to get mental assistance for a particular event, 3 visits per event.
Right.
Are there alternative programs around mental health?
I think there's varying different kinds of mental health professionals that are included in that. They have Anthem has their own network. It can be anything from a licensed clinical social worker.
The only thing I'm suggesting is if this is underutilized and we're paying, a premium for it, is there an alternative method for this coverage?
Yes, since COVID, there's been some other EAP programs, like EAP programs, mental health programs that have come out. They're more expensive. It is something that we certainly can explore over time. It is a real problem, and we're seeing it more and more in different ways within employer groups, whether it's substance abuse, mental health, even medical conditions. So,
thank you.
Yep.
I'm assuming that the EAP will be more heavily promoted in the Wellness Expo.
Absolutely.
Great.
So, absolutely. Great questions. All right, we'll move on to the dental and the vision. Just to kind of recap what we talked about. The dental, we're not increasing the cost. We talked about the ASO fee going up a little bit and adding the special needs benefit and the Right Start for Kids. The vision, we're adding we're enhancing the allowance to $150 from $130, and that cost is about $1,904, and that total cost for that plan is borne by the employees. That's not a cost associated with the school board. The dental, we're not increasing the cost of that. Again, employee paid. On the next slide, we see the claims experience, and it is very positive. In this chart by month, you can see surpluses are in the blue, reds are the deficit, but in the blue box, it is running a surplus of about $7,000, which is I would say pretty good performance, and warrants a no increase, as we illustrate on the next slide, which is the calculation of the renewal. So same methodology we used on the medical, where we take the claims experience, we add a trend factor, and then we add the fixed cost to it and come up with a slight decrease as well. Dental's a little simpler than medical insurance to deal with. All right, so in wrapping up, our recommendations are renew with Anthem at 0% increase, keep the current benefit plans, keep the contributions for the school board and for the employees at no increase. We may tweak some of them to have a slight decrease depending on the classification. Finalize the reinsurance marketing results in the next week. Promote health and wellness, incentivizing employees through their premium payroll deductions to get their physicals and age-appropriate lab and testing done, and announce no increase to the employees before the end of the school year, as an effort to really bolster retention. Renew with Delta Dental, no increase. Increase the allowance on the vision to $150, and then move the renewal to the short plan year by renewing for October 1 through June 30th.
Any
Yeah,
further
quick-
questions?
Sorry, I do have a quick question. Are the annual physicals for both employee and spouse plus the age-appropriate visits covered at 100%, or is there a copay involved?
They're covered according to the ACA guidelines, which is 100% unless it turns into a sick visit while they're there or a treatment visit, then there's
Okay.
an appropriate copay or deductible or co-insurance.
Okay. And then one other question, another acronym, the PEPM.
Yes, I should have said that from the get-go. I apologize. It's per employee per month.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great questions.
Mr. Davis, the surplus claims funds, what happens to those?
So what we typically do is set those aside to offset increases, which we've done in the past. They can be used for wellness. They can be used to offset cost of a benefit administration system. It has to go back into some form related to employee benefits. Even though you're not subject to ERISA law, that is ERISA, and that is a best practice.
So they don't come back to the employer per se, they're rolled forward?
The employer holds them, and
No.
the school board holds them. Go ahead.
I will say that we have for the past few years in December, if claims are good and that surplus is healthy, we do very few things do I do that are universally well received. We do an employee premium. Used to call it a holiday. We call it something else now. I can't remember. So you actually pay no healthcare premiums in the month of December, which is a great gift to employees. We bring that before the board action. You would have opportunities to do that if the surplus is that healthy, so it goes right back to the employee.
And we've done that how many years in a row?
I think we're 4 right now. We're on a good streak. So Mr. Davis helps us manage that. And board members, having sat here a year ago, it was a very different story. The past couple of years have been very hard in terms of claims, and I just want to thank Mr. Davis, our team, and really our employees. We're self-funded. They've worked hard, and it's paying off. So just it's Team New Kent in action, and it comes right back to our employees. So it's great to be able to put together a raise this year and offer no health care increases. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Davis, thank you. And on a side note, as we endeavor to expand and think outside the box for teacher retention, this is such an important factor and plays in, especially what the whatever December surprise or whatever that is. That's why we go through this. That's why we've spent the time going through this line by line and making sure. And we appreciate everything that all you guys do with that.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Any further questions? Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the first reading of the Teaching About Controversial Issues policy. Mr. Vaught? Yes. Mr. Vaught, could you please read it?
Teaching About Controversial Issues. Code of Virginia, 1950, as amended 21.1-78. New Kent County Board recognizes that preparation for effective citizenship is one of the major purposes of education. The preparation for effective citizenship includes the study of issues that are controversial. Such study is carried out in an atmosphere free from bias, prejudice, or coercion. In teaching about controversial issues, teachers shall establish a learning environment where each student can study the issues within a curriculum that is appropriate to the student's knowledge and maturity, and provide instruction in an atmosphere that is free from bias, prejudice, or coercion. Although the instructional program includes study of the political party system in the United States, the school board does not endorse any political party or candidate. Teachers shall be mindful of their responsibility to deliver the curriculum while not representing their personal political views to students. However, this policy should not be construed as prohibiting the impartial study and discussion of political or otherwise controversial issues in the classroom setting where such study and discussion is reasonably related to the standards of the course. The school board expects administrators, teachers, employees, and students to respect the dignity of others, acknowledge the right of others to express differing opinions, as well as foster and defend intellectual honesty, freedom of inquiry and instruction, and freedom of speech and association. The school board further recognizes the importance of ensuring that instructional resources reflect the diversity that exists in the community. In accordance to the New Kent County Public School non-discrimination policy, all staff shall be mindful that all children are created equal and one race, ethnicity, religion, disability status, or sex is not inherently superior or inferior to another race, ethnicity, religion, disability status, or sex. 2, an individual solely by virtue of their race, ethnicity, religion, disability status, or sex is not inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive. An individual shall not be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment solely or partially because of their race, ethnicity, religion, disability status, or sex. And 4, an individual's moral character is not determined by their race, ethnicity, religion, disability status, or sex. Further, New Kent County Public Schools shall not teach nor suggest to students anything to the contrary. In addition, staff shall not provide or participate in any professional development activities to the contrary. This policy does not prohibit teachers from including in their instruction as part of a course of study utilizing the textbooks and other instructional materials adopted in accordance with approved curriculum that includes the historical oppression of a particular group of people based on race, ethnicity, religion, disability status, or sex, as well as based on class, nationality, geographic region, and/or other differences. In addition, teachers shall not initiate nor engage in discussions with students about sexual orientation or gender identity. Sexual orientation is defined as an individual's physical, romantic, and/or emotional attraction to people of the same and/or different gender. Gender identity is defined as an individual's personal concept of their gender. Classroom discussions of political and other controversial issues shall be facilitated by teachers without violating the provisions outlined in this policy and utilizing an impartial and objective perspective of the subject matter.
Thank you, Mr. Vaught. The chair is now opening the open for discussion and questions.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Vaught, is this being brought forward as something that you want adopted into the New Kent County Public Schools policy manual?
It is indeed.
And what is it that led you to feel that this was an important policy to include?
This, I believe, is imperative, not just important, because the school is a place of education. It's not a political arena or a place where ideologies and/or things outside of education and the curriculum that we have approved is a place for.
And is it based more on information or the educational climate we live in at this time, or is it geared because of certain circumstances you've learned about occurring in New Kent?
Yes, it has nothing to do specifically with New Kent in particular, but the education system at large.
Thank you.
Mr. Vaught, may I offer something real quick?
You may.
Thank you, sir, or Mr. Chair. New Kent has an existing policy that goes up until, although the instructional program includes study of political party system, that one ends at candidate. So this would technically be an amendment of that policy, starting at teachers shall be mindful. That is not in the existing JNB policy. So the first two paragraphs plus those two bullets are in there. It would be the additional piece, just for clarification.
Thank you,
on the
Mr.
policy.
Superintendent. Mr. Pagano, do you wish to be recognized?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
I just have an additional comment to be made. So school boards are empowered with powers and duties that are given to us by the state. The General Assembly gives school board enumerated powers. And for us to act, especially on a policy like this, we have to have the power. So specifically, and for the record, under Virginia Code 22.1-79, subsection 5, it says that a school board shall, which means we are required to, insofar as not inconsistent with state statutes and regulations of the board, each school board shall operate and maintain the public schools in the school division, determine the length of the school term, the studies to be pursued, the methods of teaching, and the government to be employed in the schools, meaning, the administration of the school system itself. So a school board does have the power under methods of teaching to propose a policy such as this.
Thank you, Mr. Pagano. Any further questions?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Vaught, you're recognized.
Thank you, Dr. Nichols. And if it pleased the board, I would be more than happy to revise this draft as part of a revision rather than new policy.
Do I hear a motion that we recommend that Mr. Vaught revise this as an amendment?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Davis, could you please poll us?
Ms. Vidia?
Aye.
Mr. Pagano?
Aye.
Mr. Reimer?
Aye.
Mr. Vaught?
Aye.
And Ms. Dombrowski?
Aye.
So moved. Mr. Vaught, will you please return then with this rewritten as an amendment to the current policy? Thank you. Let's move on to our next agenda item, the adoption of the superintendent's fiscal year 25 operating budget and CIP.
Mr. Reimer, board members, Dr. Nichols, I'm coming to you this evening in hopes that you will adopt our approved budget for the fiscal year 2025. I won't make mention of much. You did approve the budget at our last meeting. I will say that we did get our calc tool from the state, and the figures were very close to what we had in our approved budget. It was off by about $50,000, which we lost in the new calc tool. I still feel very comfortable with where we are and recommend that we adopt our approved budget. One note, when we brought the CIP to you and you approved it, it did not include the $200,000 increase for the one-to-one initiative that we carry in our general fund operating budget. So I'm asking that we amend our CIP to include that additional $200,000. So the CIP total will be $4,030,000. Tonight, when you adopt that, I'd just like to make mention of that.
So you were confident that we can close the gap on the 50,000?
Yes, sir, I do believe that we are still being conservative with our ADM. If you remember, we are budgeting at 3,500. We are just shy of that currently in the current year, so I do believe that we'll get to that point. I would typically like to be a little bit more conservative than that, if I'm being honest, but I do still believe that we're in a good place.
Can you suggest at the next meeting some potential savings if necessary?
Yes, sir, and we do have, Mr. Reimer, if you remember when we were approving the budget, when we were careful with what we were doing based on the state budget not having our calc tool yet, we did have a couple of items that were on hold. And we continue to look at that every day with what we're hiring, and we do have some things that we may end up holding on for next year, and we will certainly let you know about that. I will say also, we are growing, and we also have had to insert some FTE that were not budgeted, which is something that we have done in the past, and we fund that through attrition. Along with that, we assume that that growth is also coming into the county.
Thank you.
And Ms. Morheim, could you remind me what the one-to-one initiative is?
Sure. There is currently a 3-year computer lease that we have for our Chromebook devices. And Mr. Terry is going to come up in a second and just a friendly reminder of what that looks like. That will be a 4-year lease moving forward and will include much more than just our Chromebooks for our students.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Terry, technology device refresh.
Mr. Terry coming out of the booth. That was impressive. We needed like walk-up music for that one.
Mr. Chair and board members, Dr. Nichols, thank you for having me tonight. I'm here to talk. I'm really excited about our new lease and some of the changes that we've got coming down the pipeline. What we're asking for tonight is approval to proceed with our 4-year lease agreement. So this is a multi-year agreement. We've already approved the budgeted amount of increase on this plan, but we need to, since it is a multi-year agreement, we need to kind of discuss that and get you guys' approval. So just at a very high level, what that includes is 3,500 Lenovo 100E Chromebooks for grades 3 through 12. That's classroom sets for elementary, grades 3 through 5, and then one-to-one take-home device in middle school. 50 adaptive touchscreen, large screen Chromebooks for special education needs for students who need a larger screen or need interactive touch on their devices. Previously, we've been kind of buying them one-off based off of IEP needs, which means we buy that device. It's not repairable. If the screen cracks, we basically have to buy another device because the cost of replacing one of these screens is almost the cost of buying a brand new unit. So all of these units will become accidental damage protection insured, which means if they break, we send them to a repair depot. They will get fixed and sent back to us. So we have 50 of those units coming. We have 450 staff HP ProBook laptops. And then the lease amount includes white glove services, which also includes things like our license registration into our workspace, inventory assignments, Windows imaging and domain registration. So a lot of that heavy lift that happens when all of these units arrive, our vendor helps us get that in a timely manner rather than my staff spending all year trying to get that done. We have 4 years of accidental damage protection. We've been currently operating on a 3-year plan. We're stretching that out another year and getting another year's use out of those Chromebooks with repair, which is really, really important. And we get repair runs from our vendor twice a week. Again, we're shifting from a 3-year lease to a 4-year lease. And we're purchasing this on a cooperative purchasing agreement that will carry the lease over 4 years. So that total per year is $703,000 with a budgetary increase of $291,000 a year. But I'll also say that when we presented this back in the early winter, that number was $709,000 a year. So we got that cut back a little bit with supply costs. So that's basically the plan that we're trying to proceed forward with and get approved. So do you guys have any questions about that?
I have a question. On the one-to-one take-home for middle school, was that not previously provided to the middle school students?
Actually, that should say middle school and high school. So
Okay,
yeah, it's
thank
yes,
you.
yeah, it's for middle and high.
Okay,
yes.
thank you. And then the classroom sets, that's 3rd through 5th grade,
3rd through 5th grade.
and they'll stay in the classroom.
Those will stay in the classroom sets on carts or some sort of charging station device that's in the classroom, and that's for 3 through 5. I don't know if you guys recall from back in the winter and spring, we're looking at new options for pre-K through 2 and trying to figure out what the real need is in those lower level grade levels. Like, we don't know if we need full classroom sets, if it's a smaller subset of units, if it's a touchscreen tablet in some of the really lower grade levels like pre-K and kindergarten. Right now, we're going to use surplus Lenovo 100E second generation that we currently have in the high school. We're going to let second graders have them for next year as we try to investigate what we should be buying for them moving forward, and then fold them into the next lease.
And what happens to, besides the ones that will be utilized for second grade, what happens to the other ones? Is there any
So
kind of
since we're
buyback
leasing them,
credit, or-
technically we could give them back to the leasing company, or we have the option to buy every unit back for $1, which is what we end up doing. And then we'll repurpose the units that we can repurpose. And then what we don't need, we'll sell to a reseller who will give us credits for that through our recycling. We have lots of technology that needs to be recycled all the time. So all of the technology that we are no longer using, we either try to sell or recycle, and we get credits for that from those vendors.
Yes, Mr. Terry, that 3,500 number, are there any extra laptops that teachers could have, maybe 1 or 2 extra in the classroom for flexibility for students who don't have their laptops that day, et cetera? I understand that some students use their phones, but if that might kind of impact our cell phone policy. So is it possible for teachers to have at least an additional laptop in the classroom?
So these numbers are scoped out at every student would have a take-home device in the secondary setting, and that would be part of their daily expectations to bring in. We will have some units on, as Ms. Morgheim said, our ADM total is 3,500. That 3,500 number is based on our 3 through 5 enrollment using projected growth over the next 4 years. So we're buying those units now because we're going to need them later. So if we put them all in every classroom gets 3 or 4 extras, we're going to run out of Chromebooks in year 4. And we're in year 3 this year. We're having a really hard time. Like when lots of units go out to the repair depot, we've got kids waiting 2 or 3 days for a device. And I don't want to be in that situation again. So if we think that we need to buy more units than that, then we may need to have another discussion about purchasing additional units for classroom. But this was not spec'd out with that in mind. It was spec'd out with extra units for growth and repair turnaround. But we can explore those options if we need to.
And that would require a budgetary amendment.
Yes,
Mr. Terry, when you talked about assessing the needs of the second graders and the kindergarten through second grade, how are you planning on doing that?
By working with the teachers and Mr. Miller on the instructional side and instructional technology resource teachers in those grade levels to make sure that we're buying the proper device that teachers can work with students, but also that are effective in delivering the instructional content. So currently we have some smaller Lenovo Chromebook tablets that we're using. We're going to use those in pre-K and K next year, but they have not been very popular. So we're trying to decide, are we going to move towards something like an iPad or a touch device like that? So we really want to make sure that we get it right, so we don't want to rush a decision and just buy more Chromebooks. From
So I have 2 concerns with regard to that. Not just that the children are comfortable with the adoption, but whether or not they're necessary at all. And when you do that study, I would appreciate that you keep that in mind.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
One more question. Acronym. ADM?
That's your membership. That's our membership count.
Thank
how
you.
many students we have enrolled. So
What
it's
is that?
average daily membership.
Thank
So it's not just about having 3,500 students currently enrolled. They take the sum of all the days that they were enrolled, and that counts as our membership number.
And that's how we receive state funding.
That's how we get funded.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Thank you, Mr. Terry. So next on the agenda is Mr. Miller with the adoption of the Health Family Life textbook.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Dr. Nichols, last month came forward to talk to you about our health and family life textbooks and desire at secondary for us to adopt 2 new textbooks, for one for middle school and one for high school. Several of you have had the opportunity to review those. Thank you for coming out and scheduling that time. And we've had 1 or 2 community members who've come out. We've received no feedback from those, but have had some people come out and review them. So that is up for your vote tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions you have this evening beforehand. So. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Nope. Thank you, Mr. Miller.
If I can make a comment. Mr. Miller, thank you for, just as we have done with other textbooks and we will continue to do with curriculum, it helps tremendously to have that open schedule so that we can go and look and really know the curriculum or know the textbook prior to voting on it. So I think that would be the reason that there's not a ton of questions. Most of them have been answered through being able to look at review the curriculum and the textbooks. So
Yeah.
thank you.
I also
you're welcome.
appreciated the standards that were printed out for our reviews so that we could compare and understand what the state requires and
Yeah.
what the books provide. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Huh? I'm next as well. So I'm
Mr.
just
Miller.
gonna hang out until then.
Thank you for remaining. Thank you for remaining. I think that ends the questions for the textbooks. On the next item, Title I Family Engagement Policy, second read.
Yes, thank you. So last month I came before you with parent engagement policy. Since then, Ms. Cunha has been great to sort of work with staff on some of the things that she brought up last month. So we made some adjustments to the policy, and it's up for vote tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about that as well.
Any questions?
Just a clarification. It looks like the first half is specific to New Kent County Public Schools parent engagement policy as a whole. While it does reference Title I, it does so primarily because that's required?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And then the second half is specific to Title I.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. And then this is just the update that goes into the policy manual?
Yes, ma'am. This is an amendment to what we currently have. We're required under Title I. One of the requirements is that it is revisited every year. And so as part of this revisit, we made some amendments, so we had to bring it back to you. Sometimes it's reviewed, but there's no amendments suggested by the Parent Advisory Committee. So at that point, we wouldn't bring it back. But in years where there's suggested amendments, we do bring that before you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Cunha.
Yeah,
and everyone in the office. It reads way better.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. And Mr. Miller, you're still up.
Yes. I'll sit and come back if you'd like.
So the federal programs grant second read.
Yes. So last month I brought the Title I, II, III, and IV to you for consideration. These grant applications are due July 1st, so I just wanted to get them for you for the second time to get hopefully your approval. I'm happy to answer again any questions you have about any of the 3 grants.
I do have one question. Yes, may I be recognized, Mr. Chair? I do have one question going
ma'am.
back to the parent engagement policy, if possible.
Oh, yes.
So we are going to, is there a motion to move back to the engagement policy?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
By acclamation? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Davis, we are now back on the engagement policy. Yes, go ahead, Ms. Dombrowski.
Is there a way to proliferate this out to the community? Has that been done before? Just as a way to help parents understand their responsibility and the opportunity that they have to be engaged?
Yeah, so I can speak several things there. So the Title I portion is presented every year at the elementary levels because those are the Title I schools. So that's already taken care of. And they do that in an open meeting every fall. But we can definitely work on how do we get that out at the secondary level as well, at least the first portion that has to do with general parent engagement. Yeah.
And are all three elementary schools Title I this year?
So George Watkins, let's
This
finish
coming
there.
year?
Right, so this coming year, George Watkins will not be a Title I school, but we can still make sure that it's covered there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, happy to.
Any further questions about the engagement policy? Okay, we are then closed on this subject. Mr. Miller, could you please go over the federal program applications? Thank you.
Happily. So again, just the 4 title grants coming before you tonight. This will be up for vote, so happy to answer any questions that you have about any of those.
I have questions.
Yes, ma'am.
I noticed that Dana Gum's information is on there now that she's no longer with us. I'm assuming that will be updated before
Yes, ma'am.
they're submitted.
Yes, ma'am.
And then on Title I, objectives 1 and 2 on page 6, will those be updated with the spring 2024 data?
Yes, ma'am.
I know that's just barely coming back, but do we know if we've met those objectives yet?
We're still with preliminary scores right now.
Okay.
And so as soon as those are finalized this summer, we'll get that updated. And we'll do sometime this summer, once everything's finalized, we'll come back with just a general data presentation for you on how all the SOLs came out. And so during that, we'll include that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. And then also on Title III, objectives 1 and 2 on page 18, to update that with the data to show where we are. And do we know if we've met those goals yet?
Again, we're still waiting on those to be finalized.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? No? With that being said, then Ms. Lawler.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Division Literacy Plan, second read.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board, and Dr. Nichols. I am back with our Division Literacy Plan in alignment with the Virginia Literacy Act. Since I last came to you in May, there are no updates, so it has remained the same. But I wanted to circle back to some of the questions you all had last time. As far as measuring success, we will continue to measure our professional development success as we implement the VLA-aligned professional development. We will also provide updates as far as implementation goes of our curriculum, and then the quantitative data for our district-wide assessments on things like VALs, benchmarks, HMH assessments, and then, of course, SOL test results. One of the questions last time was support for students. So I wanted to bring back some concrete numbers. Mighty Minds was the tutoring program we did for students in grades 3 through 5. It was for 9 weeks. Transportation and snacks were provided for the students. It was held on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so about an hour each of those days, and we served about a total of 244 students through that. So that's a great success that we do each year.
Any questions for Ms. Lawler? Ms. Dombrowski, would you like to be recognized?
Yes. I noticed that it will be posted on the New Kent County Public Schools once it's finalized. Okay. I think that's all I had. It's really well done. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair,
yes.
If I may. Ms. Lawler, thank you again for everything you do, but the additional work that we had asked you to do in terms of getting this information. And I think it's important that the public recognize and realize that we're going above and beyond SOL scores and receiving accumulative data on actually the progression of how the students are doing. Where SOLs may talk or refer to how well they test, we really wanted to find out what they were retaining. So thank you for doing that.
There's a lot of data points that are important when we look at our students.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Nichols here this evening for the second read of changes to the parent handbook. On the first read, we're actually now in the JHCD regulation. So on the first read, there was recommendation to add some verbiage, and you will see that noted in red, so that edit was made after the first read when we were together last month. And again, just the changes in the student handbook were essentially due just to some redundancy and some language that was not necessary. And the regulation itself, we did some pronoun changes such as child to student, that type of thing. But other than that, it's essentially the same. There was one citation that was incorrect in the regulation itself, and that's been removed.
Any other questions for Mr. Dermar? Thank you, sir, for taking care of those items.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Do I hear a motion to amend the agenda to remove consideration of the cell phone policy from the agenda and push it to the July meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and a second. Is there a vote? Ms. Davis, could you please poll us?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion is carried 4-1. Next on the agenda is the citizen comment period. Is there a list of speakers? So for the citizen comment, we have two speakers, Mr. Miller and Ms. Trivett. Please confine your remarks to 3 minutes, and we'll notify you. Oh, there we go. Please note that the comments are limited to 3 minutes. Once the timer sounds, please promptly finish your comment and return to your seat. It's customary for us not to make any comment immediately after. Please leave your contact information so that we can get in touch with you. Any further questions? Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Mr. Chairman, board members, Dr. Nichols, my name is Tom Miller. I live in New Kent County in District 5 at 14400 Winding Grove Lane, Lenexa. This evening, I'd like to address the cell phone use in our schools by our students. In Jonathan Haidt's recent book, which was discussed on CBS News this morning, The Anxious Generation, he addressed cell phone usage in our schools. His recommendation is to keep cell phones out of our schools to create a healthier learning environment. Schools that have implemented smartphone bans report improved focus, reduced anxiety, and better social interaction among the students. I sent the board members a copy of the Chesterfield County Public School phone policy. Not that I'm necessarily advocating for it. It's a bit complex. It has a policy for elementary, middle, and high school. The reason I did that is I formerly lived in Chesterfield County and still have some contacts in the Chesterfield County Public School Administration area, and I wanted to know how the implementation of their policy was going. In particular, did they get pushback from parents? The answer was they got very little pushback from parents. And I said, well, you know, what did you really observe? The one thing that they observed after they implemented their policy was the students started talking to each other. So, another point in 2020, the National Center for Education Statistics reported that 70% of U.S. schools had moved to prohibit cell phones for non-academic purposes. They cited links between smartphones' use and bullying and social isolation. In closing, I ask you to take action with the cell phone issue in our New Kent Public Schools. I thank you for your service and dedication.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Ms. Trivett?
Dear school board members, thank you for seeking input from the community regarding the cell phone uses policy. This is, I'm going to read to you a letter that I sent to you all. I hope you all have it. I'm the parent of 2 students who have had success in New Kent elementary schools and who will be entering middle school this fall. My husband and I are very worried about their continued success because of negative information we've heard about the state of our middle and high schools, including the misuse of cell phones. I have about 8 points of concern when phones are in our schools. 1, student distraction and diminished focus on studies. 2, teacher and instructional distraction. 3, social media harassment and cyberbullying. 4, violence filmed on school property and disseminated on social media. 5, access to questionable content. 6, physical and mental health issues exacerbated by social media. Studies show dramatic spikes in depression and mental illness when schools are in phones are in school. 7, encouraging cheating. And 8, preventing socialization between students and teachers. I strongly encourage the board to implement a total ban on student cell phone usage on school grounds, except for medical, IEP, or instructional reasons. The best practice for implementation is the use of a system or device such as Yonder, which locks away the phones. This approach removes the burden of policing from teachers and administrators, ensures an even and fair application of the policy. I understand the difficulty of prying screens out of the hands of our children. It is the biggest struggle in our house, and we are 2 parents with 2 children implementing one-on-one defense against phone screens. My children don't have phones yet, but they have other screens. And it is their currency. And they earn the privilege of using their screens with good behavior, and they lose the privilege with bad behavior. And boy, do they scream and cry about it. But we have to teach them how to use these devices, and that's done at home. I don't want to transfer that burden to the school system. I want them being educated at school. I'll do the other development at home. There are many concerns from some parents about why their children may need phones in school. There are good workarounds and mitigation strategies, and I'll be glad to go into depth with you all at any time. Especially for shelter-in-place and evacuation situations, the students don't need to be distracted by phones. They need to be listening to their teachers and following instructions. Oh, thanks. I didn't even hear anything. So I can go over those other issues if you all have questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, thank you all for your comments. We'll now move on to our action items. First on the agenda is consideration for the adoption of the approved fiscal year 25 budget and CIP. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Motion second.
Ms. Davis?
Mr. Bullock?
Aye.
Mr. Pagano?
Aye.
Ms. Kuhn?
Aye.
Ms. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Reimer?
Aye. The motion's passed 5-0. Next on the agenda is consideration of approval of the technology device refresh as presented by Mr. Terry. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
A second?
I second.
Ms. Davis, could you please poll us?
Aye.
Mr. Pagano?
Aye.
Ms. Cunha?
Aye.
Ms. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Reimer?
Aye. Motion is passed 5-0. The next item on the agenda is the consideration for the approval of the Health Family Life textbook adoption as presented by Mr. Miller. Do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Motion is second has been made. Please poll us, Ms. Davis.
Mr. Vaught?
Aye.
Mr. Pagano?
Aye.
Ms. Cunha?
Aye.
Ms. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Reimer?
Aye. The motion is passed 5-0. Do you need a pause or anything, Ms. Davis? Next item on the agenda is the approval of Title I Family Engagement Policy. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Davis?
Mr. Vaught?
Aye.
Mr. Pagano?
Aye.
Ms. Cunha?
Aye.
Ms. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Reimer?
Aye. Next is the approval of the federal programs application. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second's been made. Please poll us, Ms. Davis.
Mr. Vaught?
Aye.
Mr. Pagano?
Aye.
Ms. Cunha?
Aye.
Ms. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Reimer?
Aye. The motion is passed 5-0. Next is the approval of the Division Literacy Plan. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second's been made. Ms. Davis, please poll us.
Mr. Vaught?
Aye.
Mr. Pagano?
Aye.
Ms. Cunha?
Aye.
Ms. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Reimer?
Aye. Motion is passed 5-0. Good work, Ms. Lawyer. Next is the approval of the Parent Handbook Update to Policy JHCDR. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made in second. Ms. Davis?
Mr. Vaught?
Aye.
Mr. Pagano?
Aye.
Ms. Cunha?
Aye.
Ms. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. Reimer?
Aye. That concludes the action items. Now is time for board comments. Ms. Kuhn, any comments?
Yes, I want to encourage the public to continue to reach out to the school board members if you have any input specifically on cell phone policy or any other issues and concerns that you have. We have phone numbers listed on the school website. We have our emails. Several of us have been holding office hours, monthly office hours. So I encourage you all, you have the opportunity to provide feedback, and I personally encourage you to do so. Thank you.
Mr. Pagano?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, thank everybody for coming out and participating tonight. Citizen comments were very, very helpful. The second read of the cell phone policy was removed from tonight's agenda to review legality, clarity, cohesiveness, and implementation. But make no mistake, it is this board's intention to institute a cell phone policy and to bolster and clarify the regulations in support of that policy. So stay tuned. Thanks again.
Thank you, Mr. Pagano. Mr. Vaught?
I second Mr. Pagano's comments and would like to add for the Memorial Day program we had at the Providence Forge Community Center, which involved our Navy ROTC cadets, and I've never been so proud. They did us proud. They were there. They were sharp. They actually read each of the fallen members' names and conducted themselves in such a professional and impressive manner. So I would just like to thank them and look forward to an increase and improvement even as we move along into the infantry of that program. And thank all of you who came out for citizens' comments. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Vaught. Ms. Dombrowski?
I second those comments, and I third your comments. Yeah, I want to thank the New Kent County the Providence Forge Recreation Center. That was an incredibly touching program, and it was wonderful to be there to witness it. As I was getting ready to leave tonight for the meeting, I mentioned to my son that it seems like the last couple school board meetings has been on the same day as these big booming thunderstorms, and he said that's sending you a message. And we had been talking about the cell phone policy, which he is adamantly against. And as I keep reiterating to him, we want to understand all sides of this issue. I am very, very grateful for all the teachers who took the time, and staff and administrators, to provide us with their input and their insights. I'm very grateful for the parents who have reached out to me. So important that we understand these different scenarios and things we need to consider. One thing I do want to clarify is that right now there is a school policy manual. There is no policy within that manual that directly addresses cell phone use. What is addressed is cell phone use in the code of conduct. And so there's a difference. There's no policy to compare this to because there isn't one enforced. The code of conduct will specify exactly how the policy will be implemented and enforced. And that is a different subject. That is something that I believe will be handled primarily by administrators and staff, if I'm correct, once the policy passes. Please know that we are all really doing our best to study this issue from all sides. There is a lot of information out there, and at the end of the day, we have to do what's best for the whole community of our children and our teachers, and just know that we're trying to consider all sides of the issue. You might call it a risk versus benefits analysis, and find ways to address the concerns where they exist. Thank you.
Mr. Superintendent, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is our last school board meeting of the school year, technically. So as I close out the 5th year of being superintendent, I just want you to know it's still an honor and a privilege, and one that I'm thankful for every day to serve the 500 plus employees and the 35 plus 100 students and families. It is an amazing place. We are better than we were 5 years ago, and 5 years from now we're going to be even better because we work together, because we are Team New Kent. I'm excited about Friday. Friday is graduation day. It'll be at William Mary Hall. It is a early dismissal that day for all families so that anybody with a ticket can attend graduation. I don't want you to show up and say, Superintendent said I can be there. But I've said since my first day for a long time that I don't want the graduation to be an end but a beginning. I want you to walk across that stage into something. Mr. Reimer should have his pin on tonight with the 3 E's or E3. We have kids that are going to walk directly into or enroll post-secondary at some of the most prestigious colleges and universities and amazing, affordable community colleges. Love that. We have students that are going to be employed by Train and other industries and have great careers right across that stage. And then to Mr. Vaught's point, the 3rd E, which we're building out, we're going to have kids enlist into the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, Coast Guard, you name it. Our kids are doing those 3 things. So we're going to celebrate them big time, but it's just the beginning of their journey because they have a strong foundation here. So thank you for an incredible school year. Blink, and we'll be back. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. I was told one thing to say tonight, and I went on my graduation piece. I also want to, we have Relay for Life, June 29th. It is a big-time community event. We have a team. Some of the people up here are on our team, so please come out and support. If you can't come out, please support. It's a great cause, and it's in honor of Ms. Page. It's the first one that she will not be at physically, but I know her spirit will be there, so come out, celebrate, and support. Now I'm officially done, Mr. Chair.
So This last week, we celebrated many of the school's employee accomplishments. And we had employees throughout the system that were recognized for their long service, their excellent service, and I'm just very appreciative that all of you who have contributed this year to the achievements of our children and our students and have made it a very good year. Thank you all. And next year, we're going to do even better, right? Thank you. With that, we're adjourned.